Hey, how you guys doing? Bryce and Barbara here at Beach Fitness. We're in my corner. We're going to talk a little bit about plantar fasciitis. This will be the first part of our foot series. Plantar fasciitis is something that I know I've dealt with several times over my life. It's definitely one of those things when you start to get it. I know I've gone through the bad decision-making process of going, it's just going to go away. If I just rest it, it'll just go away. And that usually doesn't happen. It usually gets worse, or it just lingers for a period of time. And then even when I started doing the exercises and some treatment on it, it took a little bit of time to get it to actually get better and go away. So first thing you always need to look at is, what do you do all day on your feet? Are you doing a lot of exercise, things that are like dynamic, running, jumping? Are you walking a lot? Are you doing a lot of stressful things on your feet? I know one of the first times I had plantar fasciitis was because I decided I wanted to transition into more of those barefoot shoes that didn't have a lot of sole to them. And because I'm somebody that's pretty active on my feet all day, my feet just weren't prepared for that. So of course it inflamed the plantar fascia, and I just had to change my shoes. So looking at your shoes is probably the first thing that you need to look at as far as treating this, and understanding what your foot environment is even inside those shoes. Those are things that we can definitely follow up as far as DM questions. And then additionally, you need to, how are you standing all day? So we've gone through some different videos where we've talked about standing posture. If you're somebody that tends to stand and lean forward in your posture, which I know sometimes is difficult to self-diagnose, but if you're leaning into the front of the foot all day, those calf muscles, those feet muscles, all the plantar fascial muscles are in stress all day long, so then all of a sudden that becomes a problem. So that's kind of the foundational things. What are you doing all day? What's your foot environment like in regards to your shoes, or how are you on the ground? And then what is your standing posture? We're going to go through a handful of exercises for you at home to be able to treat plantar fasciitis. So one of our first exercises is going to be to go after the calf. So you have a couple layers of fascia or connective tissue throughout your calf. The two major muscles we're going to be looking at is the gastroc and the soleus. Those two muscles are to plantar flex the ankle or the foot. And so what we want to do is a typical stretch. You can do this up against a wall. You can do this leaning over on something. But the main part of the stretch is we want to press that heel down. We want to start with the foot to be in a nice straight position. We want the leg to be straight, meaning that the leg is going to be nice and straight. The spine's going to be nice and tall. Head in a nice tall position, tucking the tail. And then as much as we want to support ourselves on that front leg and lean forward into the stretch without losing our heel position, we want to elongate through that chain. So it's like she wants to press her head through the corner of the ceiling in this position. So she's going to really try to press the back of the heel down, and she's going to try to reach forward. Now, in the calf muscle, the gastroc, which is the big chunky muscle here at the top, you have two parts to it. You have one part of it on the outside and one part of it on the inside. If you want to stretch more of the outside, which I highly recommend that you try to get mobility through those different parts of the muscle, I'm going to have her turn her heel out just a little bit, and now she's going to press the outside of that heel into the ground while she tries to keep that knee turned in. So then that's going to create more tension on the outside, and then if I want to work more of the inside, I'm going to have her slide her heel in a little bit, and she's going to press the inside of the heel towards the floor while trying to turn the knee out a little bit, and that's going to give her more of a stretch on this inside area. So those are going to be the two basic stretches that we want to look at for getting very specific on how we want to stretch this muscle. Otherwise, we have sort of a generalized position, which is the foot is straight, and we're really trying to press the backside of that heel down as we elongate through the body. And again, trying to work forward into that stretch to get as much stretching here as we can. We're going to do the stretch 30 seconds times 3, which means we're going to do it 3 times in a row. It's always a good idea to stretch the other side, especially if you've been getting plantar fasciitis, because the other side a lot of the times is also working pretty hard. An exercise that may not be totally accepted these days in the fascial world, especially where I come from, doing things like foam rolling or ball rolling and things like that typically we question whether or not that's the best form of modality for you. But a lot of people like doing it because it feels good like a massage. Now, this is a lacrosse ball. A lot of people like to use like harder surfaced balls. You can see that this is a pretty firm ball. My goal isn't to smash and essentially potentially destroy or make more inflammation in the plantar fascia. So generally what I tell my clients is if they can work with more of a tennis ball, something that's softer, and I don't want them to really crush into the ball. I want them to kind of gently roll, because the goal of treating the plantar fascia is moving all the layers of the foot and trying to keep the hydration in those areas so things can heal themselves. So generally I like them, especially if they sit a lot at a desk, I tell them to just throw a tennis ball underneath your desk and just kind of just simply roll your foot around. They don't need to really press very hard. They can just kind of generally kind of like massage. If they feel like there's a trigger point or more of a sore area, you can kind of press into that or roll into that area a little bit more. But it's just to kind of get the fluids and the layers of the tissue moving. Sometimes what I like to do is just to go in the different parts of the foot where we're more back towards the heel, where generally we see some of the symptoms of plantar fasciitis, and then try to open and move those toes back and forth, because that's kind of like pinning the fascia down, and as you move the toes it helps to slide and glide those different layers. And then you can go into the middle part of the foot, do the same thing, and then you can get more into the balls of the feet and do the same thing. And you can kind of hit more towards the small pinky toes or more towards the big toe in the arch area. And again, my goal is just to kind of give them something that generally will feel good, and they can kind of work through some different positions, especially if they can't traditionally do a stretch or an exercise during the day if they're sitting at a desk or they're working or anything like that. So really kind of look for, usually I like an older tennis ball, something that's a little softer, and you can roll your foot out. There's not really a timeline or a specificity of any of that, but usually after you do that, you should feel that there's an increased circulation in that area. Okay, so the next stretch we want to look at, it seems pretty common sense to be able to stretch the bottom of the foot because that's where the pain is. It seems like, especially with a lot of devices that are out on the market, to pull the foot into a dorsiflex position and pull those toes up, thinking that we need to stretch and mobilize all of that tissue on the back, on the bottom side of the foot. We also need to remember you have tissue on the top side of the foot, and the tissue on the top side of the foot a lot of times can get very tight, especially if you look at the posture of a lot of our shoes that tend to be in more of a rounded up position. Okay, so what I like to do is I get a lot of relief from this, and this is sort of the ignored stretch, which is to tuck your toes under, your little toes under, you're on top of the foot, and you're just standing in what is a good posture for you. Generally you want to be supported, and then you're trying to press the front of the ankle forward, trying to stay more towards the small toes here. And as she presses that forward, you can feel some stretching on the top of the foot. Okay, and she's a little rolled out because to roll that heel out, that's going to keep us in these small toes. Okay, and as we stretch the muscles on the top of the foot, along with even some of the shin muscles, that's going to help to mobilize or stretch out the top muscles there so that it can relax the toes down to the floor. We can then take this same stretch and roll more towards the big toe. So as you can see how she's rolled her heel in, and now the concentration is through the big toe, and now she's working on that extensor for that metatarsal of the big toe in that flexed position. Okay, so those are great, two great stretches. 30 seconds times 3 gives a lot of relief to the bottom of the foot, especially if you're wearing more of a running shoe that tends to have more of that arched position to it. So the next stretch we're going to do is for the soleus muscle. Now the soleus muscle is more deep to the gastroc, so we don't typically see that muscle, but the muscle sits a little lower below this sort of this teardrop shaped muscle that we have in our calf. And so usually what we're going to do to stretch that is, this is more of a modified position, but for a lot of people to get into the stretch, this is a little bit easier to start with. Again, we're going to press the back of the heel into the ground. She's in her angled forward position where she's trying to lean forward in the stretch. Now I want her to bend this knee, and she's going to really try to work to press that knee forward as she keeps the heel on the ground, and she should feel that stretch coming down and lower towards the Achilles tendon, and that's going to be a deeper stretch into this calf muscle to try to get the different layers of the calf to work on mobility. Now come ahead and come out of that posture and get into a position kind of like me, to the ground. So the reason I gave you the modifier is because in this position, it's a little bit more difficult for the everyday person to get into a kneeling posture. So what she's going to do is she's got her knee and her foot about in the same line. So go ahead and slide this knee a little bit forward. There we go. And now what she can do is, usually what I like to do is take both hands and grab the front of your foot like you're trying to pull the front of the foot up, or wedge it up. If you had something to wedge it up, like a little pad or something like that, or a towel, you could do that. But I like the leverage of being able to have your hands underneath. So what she'll do is try to keep that spine nice and straight, lengthening through the spine, chin down a little bit. And she's just going to use her torso, her body, on her thigh, and she's going to keep pressing that heel down. And as she presses the heel down, she's going to lean forward into her thigh to try to press that knee out and forward over her toes. And you should feel a very similar stretch down low in that calf area. And that's going to be the soleus stretch. So again, you have to have some basic mobility to get into this position because the hip angle and getting and kneeling on the floor. And so once you're in this position, you're trying to leverage a little bit up, you're trying to press that knee forward, and you're going to try to hold that for 30 seconds. You're going to do it 3 times, and that's going to be your soleus stretch. Okay, the next stretch we want to look at is actually stretching the plantar fascia, or the plantar muscles that are on the bottom of the foot. So go ahead and just get in a position like this, and you're actually going to tuck your toes underneath you. And you're just going to sit on those heels. And as you sit on those heels, what that's doing with that toe extension is that it's stretching the bottom of the foot, and you should feel some stretching through the arch of the foot. Now, you can do this one leg at a time if you want to, if like being in this position is too difficult. If kneeling like this for your toes is too difficult, you can try to sit up a little bit, but the goal is to have that extension of the toe, okay, to try to stretch out the bottom of the foot. Again, you would hold something like this for 30 seconds and do it 3 times in a row. And it's always a good idea to try to work the same side at a time. Okay? Okay, one of our last stretches that we're going to look at is actually stretching the front shin muscle, which is your anterior tibialis. That anterior tibialis, again, plugs down into the front of the foot as it comes towards that big toe. So she's in the proper position. She's kneeling. She can stretch both sides at the same time. Her toes are pointed backwards, and all she's going to do here is just lean back a little bit to go on your hands, and now lift the front of your knees up, and you can feel some stretching going through the front of the shins there. So this is a bilateral stretch, which means she's stretching both sides at the same time. She can straighten one leg out and put the concentration on one of her legs, and that way she has more of a stretch on that just one side of the exercise. So again, trying to stretch out the front part of the calf. 30 seconds times 3 is going to give us a lot of good results for, again, mobilizing the top of the foot to help relieve a lot of the bottom of the foot. Okay, one of the exercises I like to use when training the plantar fascia, because we need to strengthen it as much as we need to mobilize it, because remember, a lot of the damage to the plantar fascia is like little micro tears, so we want to reinforce that tissue. So what we want to do is, we're on usually a relatively more firm surface, something that's more slick, like a wood floor or a tile floor. You're going to put a towel down. What I want you to do is you're going to lift your toes, try to spread those toes out, and grab the towel and pull it back. And when she pulls it back, she's trying to really contract all the muscles in her arch, like she's trying to really bring those toes back as far as she can. And then when she bunches it all up, then we slide it back out, and she can do that again. And generally, anywhere from about 20 to 50 reps is a good count, and we can do that 2 to 3 reps as we work here to try to strengthen the arch of the foot. Because again, a lot of times the plantar fascia is affected by, if you just put this foot up here, if the arch starts to flatten out because there's a lot of weight or stress through the foot and those muscles can't support that arch anymore, you start to get a little micro tearing or inflammation between all those different layers, and that position of the foot is now going to be affected to give you a lot of different pain, so we have to reinforce that area. So that's going to be one of your easiest and best exercises for treating plantar fasciitis, along with some of the mobility exercises that we've done. If you like what we've done, comment below, ask questions for us. It's Bryce and Barb here at Beach Fitness, Bryce's Corner. That's our plantar fasciitis, which is part of our foot series, so stay tuned.